if I decided to turn back and apologize or, confess what I had done, there was not one time that my parents did not, greet me with a hug and I love you. Like not once. So I think in my mind also, it was just, I can... Not that I did it on purpose.
We should have been harder on you.
Even harder on you. Are you kidding?
Life is like a roller coaster, but it's better when we go through it together. Welcome to the Candace Cameron Bure Podcast. We're here to share conversations about life's challenges, celebrations, and everything in between. Dr. Josh and Christy Straub are teaching us about becoming better parents. And you'll also get to meet my daughter, Natasha, today. Yay, come join us. Hey guys, the Bure family is just making the rounds.
I love it. Natasha, welcome.
Thanks,
welcome to the show. This has been many conversations.
Yeah.
This is something in the making because we talk at home. They're all like, why haven't we been on the podcast yet?
Oh, yeah.
It's true. We have.
They're like, we're going to make your numbers soar.
Because I'm going to shoot it straight, Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing I love, and I love this conversation, and this is the permission I hope to give to people listening, because we're talking about the spiritual growth environment of your home today. Like we're talking about what does discipleship look like? What does it look like? Natasha, what did you experience growing up in terms of even following Jesus, and what does that look like? But I also think for what I want to set the stage for is for all parents to give permission that we can interview our kids to find out what is sticking. Because I think for me as a dad, I'm like, oh, this is definitely going to be the thing.
Yeah.
And then I talk to my kids and they're like, oh, Dad, that wasn't the thing. This is the thing that actually was. And so I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit.
That's why I wanted to bring you on today. And Max is going to be in another episode later too, because as we were talking about this, it is one thing to talk about it as adults and being in the driver's seat of parenting. And I just thought, it would be so great to have the kids because then we could actually hear what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
We might think we know it all, but we want it to be effective too. So we're really happy that you're here.
Yeah. And I think, Natasha, you bring you're 26. Is that okay? We say that?
25.
25.
About to be 26.
Okay. About to be 26.
Close.
26. It's just, you're a young woman and you have so much wisdom on your own now. And you're going to be entering, this season of creating your family and what is it, from mom and dad that you want to carry into life? And what are things that were that felt a little clunky or that didn't quite fit?
Yeah.
And so I'd even just love to start with that. What are some things about even mom and dad that just things that stood out to you that really have formed who you are?
I think that my family and my parents in particular just really formulated this open dialogue that we had all the time. That's something that I'm so grateful for. I always felt like I could say honestly, I was going to say it anyways, but
This is true.
I was going to say regardless, but I always felt comfortable in my house that if I felt something or if whatever emotion that was, I could go to either one of my parents and I could talk to them, or if it had something to do with my brothers or school or sports or whatever. And it was never, this is what's going to go on from here on out, whether it's a situation or just advice. It was always okay, well, let's unpack that. Let's talk more about that. Why do you feel that way? And if my mom is telling me, well, we're going to go about it in this direction, she would always give a why, this is why we're doing this. And I think that it helped me understand their decision-making as parents, that I didn't feel so in the dark. Of course, there were many times where she would just say, well, it's because I said so, which, she's my parent. And of course I have to respect that and follow her lead. But I think that, having that open dialogue was so helpful, and it made me feel very comfortable to even go to them, in times of need or worry when I was dealing with own things in my adult life,
Yeah. Candace, I'd love to know from you, because we've talked in previous episodes where you didn't necessarily have this model growing up in the early years. Where did you and Val come into a place of going, we need to cultivate this spiritual environment of our home? And take us a little bit behind the scenes of that and how that felt implementing that.
Sure. And it did look very new to me, especially when the kids were younger, because I didn't grow up in a household that was modeling that. Although my parents very much lived by the golden rule.
Okay. Yeah.
Do unto others as you would do unto them, or they would do unto you. And so very moral home, but didn't ever have the backup of, well, this is because the Bible says so, or Scripture, or things like that. So when the kids were younger and we realized that, Val and I realized like this is the path that we wanted to take and we were going to do some things differently. I think the first person I looked to was my brother Kirk and his wife Chelsea. And because they were already modeling that, we were just kind of behind in that relationship with the Lord and then wanting to have that with our kids. So I had so many conversations with them. You know, I looked to the people around me who were living that type of life and teaching their kids those types of principles. So that was the immediate. But then once we decided on schooling, which we talked about, and my kids first went to a private Christian school when they were starting kindergarten. And that helped me find people within my community alongside church, but parents that were having their kids in the school that I'm like, okay, most of them are on the same path. Not all parents are in Christian school, but most of them. And then you find the friends and it's like, okay, let's just start asking questions. What does this look like for you? What do I like about it? What do I not? What do I want to take away from it? What am I going to do at home?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, I'm going to go back to this just to kind of create the stories. We talk about spiritual development, but so, you know, your parents are leading this home they want to do it in the most godly way possible. And you made this comment earlier, you know, I want to respect my mom, even when she says it's my way or the highway, I'm your mom and you need to respect that. But I'm sure there were plenty of times that you didn't respect that.
Most times, probably.
Most times, okay.
So if we're being honest, most times.
So take us into those years of maybe even where you were trying to find your identity, you were trying to find your faith. Because it's one thing to have, and I think this is part of it where it's like, I don't want my children's faith to be my faith or to be Christy's faith.
Yeah.
I want my children to find their own faith journey. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you maybe pushed against boundaries to find that, maybe a little bit of your own journey living in the Bure home.
Yeah. From the moment I was born, I mean, I've always remembered going to church. Again, we went to Christian school all the way through high school. So it was my daily life, my routine, my parents always instilling biblical values in our life and implementing prayer and devotionals and all the things. And I remember when I was younger, it almost felt like something, I don't want to say that I had to do, but it was just a part of our lifestyle. Like it was who our family was, you know? And so when I was younger, I actually remember when I first accepted Christ, I used to go to my mom and ask her, like, am I doing a good job? Like, I thought it was something that I had to do or to earn or like to be a Christian, what that looked like.
And how old was
I want to say I was maybe like 5 or 6, like pretty young. I'll never forget that because she was like, this isn't something you have to like check in on or like earn or do or ask if you're doing a good job. You know, that's between you and Christ. That's your own relationship. But when I was younger, I didn't understand that. And then once I hit middle school and the early high school years, I was very defiant. I mean, I've always been, but like those years in particular was definitely a struggle in our household and for, you know, my relationship with my parents. And so when it once became like, I want to do this because I think that that's the right thing to do because my parents are obviously instilling those values, I'm now turning away because I want to do everything that's against what they want, like just out of spite. I'm not communicating this great, but you know,
prodigal daughter.
Yes. But like,
like, when was that? Like, when did that sort of season hit?
I don't know. I want to say when I was maybe like 13 to 16, around that age, it just became more of whatever you tell me, I'm not going to do it just because of you. Like
was that something within you? Was there a friend group influencing some of that rebellion? Was it, tell me about that.
just born that way.
Just born that way.
I was trying to get that spirit out of her.
I don't know. I don't
to
know.
my regret. But.
No, I don't know. No, it was not. I actually went down a path with friends that I think, I wasn't influenced the greatest way later. But like in those years, it really had nothing to do, I would say.
Let's get real. You were influencing the other kids to go down the bad path.
I was not a bad kid. I really wasn't. It was just at home. And also like, that's funny because, in school I did great and my teachers loved me and I had great friendships. But for whatever reason, just that parent, like that mother-daughter, father-daughter relationship of authority, I just did not like it. I did not like being told what to do, or if it wasn't my idea, then I'm just not going to do it, So I think that's where there was a bit of a disconnect. And
just a bit.
Just there
was just something giving the listener hope. I hope so.
There was just something not really, coming together. So I had a few years of just defiance, and then.
Can you just what did that look like? Like, what did that look like at home? Because you were great outside the home.
Not listening, being very disobedient, like lying, just everything. Okay. And I genuinely don't know why. I just did it. Like I truly just did it because I wasn't like that in any other aspect of my life other than to my parents. And I think it was just, I didn't want to be told what to do.
Do you see the chocolate story back when she was 3? Like this was it. And I couldn't get the confession of the lying out. And it's just what she said. Like it was just what she wanted.
Yeah.
What this is a reflection of is you didn't act out outside. Where you acted out was in the safest place in the world for you to be able to do it because you knew that you were going to be loved regardless.
100%.
And I think that's the hope I want to give to parents right now who are in a similar space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also I probably use this to, not to my advantage was that I knew always if I decided to turn back and apologize or, confess what I had done, there was not one time that my parents did not, greet me with a hug and I love you, like not once. So I think in my mind also, it was just, I can, not that I did it on purpose.
We should have been harder on you. Even harder.
Are you kidding? No, but I just mean I think to your point, I always knew that, my parents were never going to turn their back on me. And so anyways, there was just a little bit of struggle in that way. And it wasn't until I was 15 or 16, I actually went to summer camp. My parents shipped me off. They said bye-bye.
Yeah.
And by the way, they were very instrumental in that.
Oh, were you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So you guys knew about all this then.
Josh was one of the people I talked to.
So they shipped me off to camp and I went kicking and screaming. And it was there when I realized, really what a relationship with Christ looks like and how it comes from my own heart and nothing that my parents can do or my siblings can do or the people around me. That's between me and him. And that was the first time I think in my life where I truly understood what it meant to live for Christ and just to pursue that life. And I think in my head when there was the separation of, oh, this doesn't really concern my parents or this doesn't concern anyone else, I was really able to welcome it in a different way. Wow. And so, I think up until then, it was just a huge attachment to other people, which can be hard also when you grow up around it all the time, there is no separation. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like for kids growing up in Christian homes, it can be so great, like so instrumental and incredible, but also you have to learn how to fight for that relationship on your own and make it your own.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. What were some of as you started to find your own, you're saying this is like 10, 12 years ago that you're at camp and you're finding your relationship with God on your own. What were some of the maybe foundational disciplines that you did learn at home that you're like, oh, I look back on this now and you see how it's formed you, that you rely on those foundational principles. Maybe it was prayer time, maybe it was devotional time, maybe it was going to church, maybe it was the community of friends that you had. What were some of those things that you look back on and you go, I in order to make my faith my own, I'm going to draw from these specific things that my parents raised me in?
I would say consistency is one of the biggest ones, which I think is just such an overarching word for, different aspects, but consistency in prayer, consistency in going to church, consistency in having my quiet time, consistency in how I treat other people around me. And I think that a lot of people preach certain things, but don't necessarily practice them. And I feel like I was very fortunate to have parents and also siblings that really lived out what they did preach. And so having that modeled and also having the constant, visual, whether it be scripture, printed on our home or just the consistency of prayer before meals, all of those things, just it's practice and it's muscle memory,
Tell them so after you came back from camp the first time, tell them the little surprise we had for you, because she did go kicking and screaming, thought she was going off to boot camp, which it was not boot camp, by the way. It's like one of the best,
how she described
best Christian camps. It's like a summer sports camp. It was amazing. But then you came home and your bedroom.
Yeah, they did a room makeover for me. They painted, at the time, teal was my favorite color, which now I just think the room is hysterical, but you DIY'd everything.
DIY'd everything. I literally painted the room.
Yeah. She got me a brand new room. I came in new bed, new dresser, new everything. And it felt like a fresh start for me, which was really cool.
That just hit me.
But the biggest, whoa. What did I do? Right across your bed so you would wake up and look at it every day, huge on your wall.
She wrote scripture, but she also...
What scripture?
I don't even know, guys.
She looked at it every day.
Guys, this is not the point.
Galatians 5. It was the fruit of the Spirit.
Fruit of the Spirit.
And I wanted her to just wake up to it and see it every day. But it really was this palate cleansing of here's a fresh start.
Yes, but also, you would have scripture everywhere, above our doors, under our beds, wherever. It's just a constant reminder of you see it so many times, then it becomes ingrained. Clearly not that verse, apparently, because I can't remember. But other ones and other things. Surely I do remember. I knew it was the fruit of the Spirit. I just didn't know the actual verse. Yeah.
I want you to take me into because you said consistency. And I think consistency I thought that was a beautiful word that you used. I was not expecting it, I'll be honest. From the standpoint of you're saying that your parents had consistency, but yet there were rebellious years. Mm-hmm. What were the consistent things that your parents did looking back in those rebellious years that you're grateful that they did? That you're grateful maybe where they held their ground in certain areas that at the time felt just where were you, if you're looking back and you look back at your parents now and you're going, I'm really grateful they did X, Y, or Z. What would those things be?
I think that, of course, there would be moments of, in the middle of a temper tantrum, or if we were having a fight, sure, there's voices being raised and things going on, but it would never affect the way that they handled the rest of our family. So if I was having an issue, I feel like it was very compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the right word. Isolated. Yeah. And it wouldn't affect the way that they went to go parent, my brothers or the rest, or, deal with the rest of our family. It was an isolated incident. And I think that it very well could have affected them over time, especially because it did happen for so long, at least on my end. I really did give them such a hard time. And I'm sure after however many years of doing that, they're like, I'm ready to throw in the towel. I don't want to consistently be a good example for my child, because at this point they've just gone off the rails. And they were so consistent with me, and seeing the patience that they had. And then also just, how they continue to go on parenting maybe easier children, was very inspirational though.
One thing that I kept reminding myself of during the difficult years with Natasha was that I'm like, she's a fighter. She is such a fighter. She's so strong. And yet, this is a good thing when she learns how to bridle that strength and control that strength, what a powerhouse is she going to be?
Yeah.
And I reminded myself day after day after day and thought to myself, you know, we're going to get through another day, and you take it one day at a time when you have a strong child. But I just went, I know this is going to be a blessing. We just have to learn to bridle it and figure out how to use it for good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Do you look at your mom and dad now, and is there gratitude? Is there and I mean this not is there resentment? Is there what is for the way that they approached maybe those years, maybe the years since? What is the overwhelming feeling?
No, I mean, I truly have nothing but gratitude. I have immense amount of respect. I don't know how they did it, if I'm honest, because I truly was a nightmare. I'm not just saying that. I know that I was to a point where it made me feel bad, because sometimes it feels like I couldn't control the way I was acting, you know, especially when you're a kid. And I think you have so much going on in your brain. It's such formative years. You're being influenced by, you know, people, things you watch, things you see. And yeah, sometimes it's hard knowing you're not making it easy on your parents, and I don't like to see them struggle. So I have nothing but gratitude and respect. And another thing I just want to say that it reminded me when you were saying I was a fighter, that was another thing that I think my parents did a great job of, was positive reinforcement, which I think is one of the most incredible things that I would encourage any parents to continue to do with their children, because she would always, and my dad would paint maybe a situation that would happen and draw so many positive lights from it. I think every time that she would tell me you're so stubborn, I can't wait to see what you do with it. I can't wait to see the good that you bring. It was actually so encouraging for me, instead of her going, you're so stubborn. I can't deal with this, which of course, you know, she also probably felt that way, but she would try to see the positive in those situations. And it gave me hope. Yeah. It really did give me hope, you know? Yeah. And so I think that was one of the biggest things, is positive reinforcement and speaking life into your children and encouraging them, even when it's tough, because I'm sure there's a handful of names she probably wanted to call me and didn't, but spoke life instead. And so I think that was very helpful, you know?
This is getting me. I think just even this mother-daughter dynamic is so, what I see is so much redemption too, right? And I'd love to know, as maybe a mother one day, what about mom do you want to take into how you would raise your kids? Are there things that you've thought about? I really want to make sure I do that with my kids, how she did that for me.
Yeah, I think what was interesting to watch in my childhood was, I think there's such a balance with you and Papa. I don't think both of them were the most patient at the same time, but one of them always had more to give, you know, it wasn't, and it was different on each day.
Wow.
So that was something that I admired, because when the other parent was just down and didn't have the patience or didn't have the kind words to say, the other one would step up and say, okay, let me go deal with this. Because if I would be in a fight with my mom, my dad would come in the room and he would be the one, you know, not good cop, bad cop, but sure, he'd come in and he'd give me a hug and he'd kind of make me feel safe to talk about the feelings. And even though he was still going to implement discipline and the consequences, he still had a kinder approach.
Right. He wasn't emotionally charged.
Yeah.
Right.
At the moment, like I was.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If it was me and my dad having it out with each other, then she would come in and she would, you know, talk through the situation or maybe console him before he came and spoke to me, or vice versa. And so I think having that patience and that teamwork more than anything is so admirable, and something I really want to implement, because I can't do it alone. I know that just in general, like as a human being, I need Christ with everything. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when I get married and I have kids, I want to be able to lean on my partner in that way and have the patience to handle every situation, every conflict, tough conversation with the utmost grace and kindness that I can.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait until November to vote. You already vote every day with your dollars. At GoodRanchers.com, you can make a powerful choice to vote for American meat and make your voice heard for transparency in our food. Good Ranchers sources exclusively from American farms, which supports local ranchers and makes sure you get high-quality meat with no antibiotics or added hormones. When you shop at GoodRanchers.com, you're making a statement about the kind of values that are important to you. And right now, Good Ranchers is having a presidential promo. For a limited time, you can get free add-on for a whole 4 years until the next election. That means you get extra chicken breast, ground beef, bacon, or salmon in every order for 4 years. It's the perfect way to make sure you always have high quality meat in your kitchen. Every cut is individually packed and vacuum sealed, no more messy meal prep, and no more wasted food because of freezer burn. Good Ranchers helps you get the most flavor and value out of every ounce of meat you buy, which is great, no matter what the economy is like. Don't miss out. Use my code CANDY to claim this presidential promo worth over $1,200. GoodRanchers.com, American meat delivered.
So I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about screen time. You're, at an age now, would have been 10 to 13 years ago for you, which isn't that long ago, but is also very long ago as it relates to technology and the advancement of technology since then. And I know that as we talk about spiritual growth and development and discipleship within the home, that is a hot button topic for how do we help spiritually form our children's hearts. And I'd love for you to speak to maybe how you experience screens, some rules that you had around screens in your teenage years, whether you liked them or not, which it sounds like you didn't like them. But, and then maybe
didn't like any rules, to be honest, but yeah.
But even to talk about, to help parents who are struggling with this today, looking back, what do you look back on and go, I think these are principles that I would really be heavily considering as you think about shaping the hearts of your kids?
Yeah, they were very strict with us in terms of screen time, what we were allowed to watch on television. I think the only things, and surely I snuck a lot, but I think the only things that we were ever allowed to watch was, the Food Network, sports, and
movies.
Animal Planet was that. It was that. And movies that we would watch together. But okay, yes. But on our own, if we got home from school, there was a set of 4 channels we were allowed to watch, Wow. And I think that was because, especially children, when you're younger, your brain is just mush. It is forming to whatever it sees, mimicking whatever it sees. And so I think there was maybe a handful of TV shows when we were younger that we had on, and my dad saw the way that our attitudes were and was like, absolutely not. We will not be continuing to play this.
And I forced them to watch Full House.
She did. We were actually allowed to watch that. That was always recorded and we were allowed to watch. But in terms of screen time too, we were not allowed to have social media when we were younger. And there was always a time limit of how long we were allowed to be on, if we had computers or iPads or anything. I didn't get a phone until I was 13. I got one for my 13th birthday. But even then, when my friends had smartphones, I had a flip phone. So it was really only meant for calling and texting my parents. And I honestly, as much as I hated it truly, because I felt like I was missing out on so much in terms of technology and just my friends, I think it really is beneficial to keep boundaries and screen time, limited in terms of social media and just any technology in general, because there is just so much out there. And I think a lot of it can be so warped and affect your brains, especially when you're young. And even as adults, who are we kidding? Everything we see is just insane. And the algorithm and the things that you get fed, and you tend to believe it all and take it, at face value. And so I appreciated the fact now that they obviously had rules and boundaries, but at the time I didn't like it. And I think also limiting not only the content, but the time that you're on there, spending too much time on a screen, I just don't think is beneficial for any person. And they also made, very big efforts for us to always be outside and to play, in the yard and to get dirty with our hands. And we didn't need to be inside sitting on a screen. We just didn't.
Yeah. And Dr. Jean Twenge has this, she's out of the University of California, San Diego, UCSD. She found that beyond an hour, happiness in teenagers on a screen hits a peak at an hour. Anytime after an hour, depression starts to kick in and the depressive state starts to kick in. And it's like that 1 hour window. And I think, there's also a research study that found that it takes up to 15 to 20 minutes of boredom for creativity to kick in. And yet so I started studying this when I started to realize that like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all these tech founders and CEOs and executives of these tech companies weren't allowing their kids on screens. And they were limiting their kids on screens. And I'm going, okay, if the tech companies are doing this, what do they know about it that we don't? Well, what I realized is it takes 15 to 20 minutes of boredom for creativity to kick in. And there was another research study done where they put people in a room alone with nothing but their thoughts. There was no book, no screen, no nothing. You just had to sit in the room with nothing but your thoughts. And the whole goal was to see how long people would stay in there before they wanted to get out. And the only way you could get out is to give yourself an electrical shock. So that was how you got out. The average amount of time that people stayed in that room was like 6 minutes before. It's like, Mom, I'm bored. Can I go stick my finger in an electrical socket? It's like we don't allow our kids to be bored. And yet, and I think that these tech giants understand that it's boredom that leads to creativity. And if we want our children to be the leaders of tomorrow, we've got to allow them to be bored enough to start being creative and imaginative, because it's the creative ones that'll lead the next generation. And so I just think, even take the spiritual component out of it, just a creative standpoint as a leader, to your point, is to get outside, to run around, and I love hearing that from you now, looking back, that you're like, oh, wow. So would you speak, I would love for you to speak to this, because there's a lot of parents who are going, my child is the only one who doesn't have the cell phone, the only one who doesn't have the social media, and they are kicking and screaming, but everybody else has it. As the rebellious teenager, give that mom or dad an encouragement right now.
Oh,
I know I'm putting you on the spot, but
no, I think obviously stick to, your guns and what you believe, and obviously setting those boundaries. It really is so beneficial in the long run, and not allowing, just all the garbage on the internet to sort of wash over kids' brains, I think is truly so incredibly important. But the other thing go ahead, Mom.
No, go ahead.
This just reminded me of a story, kind of off topic, but when we were younger, and obviously we didn't have, computers, or at least we were not allowed time on the computer or anything like that. I remember me and my brothers would sit upstairs, and also we weren't really a toy family. Like, our parents didn't really, you and Papa never bought us toys. We'd never go to the store and have like an overflow of just things to play with. And so my brothers and I used to flip like the couches upside down and build these forts. And then we'd play fake baseball with pillows and like random things. And I kid you not, we could go 4 or 5 hours doing that, but it was like, that's all we had, so we just had to make up these games and these worlds, and we'd go and, play in the trees and like try to make tree houses out of nothing. And even we spent this one summer where it was in a city that doesn't have a lot of kids. And my dad, I think, had maybe bought us a bike or something. And the only store that was on our street was a hardware store. And I kid you not, every single day we would go to this hardware store, and my dad would maybe give us like $5 or something. And we would just try to go get like seeds or like a tool to build like something in the backyard. And it's the most fun I've ever had. It's really like, you don't even know the world that is out there past social media. And I am truly, my mind is so boggled by, I guess, this generation growing up. And it'll be so curious, even when I have kids, to see how I'll implement that, because it is so etched in our brain to just pull out a phone, pull out an iPad, pull out a computer, if someone's bored, if someone's crying, if someone's this, which of course it's so easy, but you really are creating this break in creativity and just how our imagination works, the ideas that flow. And so to your point, I think if you can get past that little, 15 minutes of, well, what am I supposed to do now? It's like you're entering this whole other world of creativity that's just incredible.
Yeah. And I think as parents, the hard part is your kids will wear you down.
Yeah.
Mm.
So when they keep complaining, they keep saying like, but I'm the only one. I'm the only one. And you hear it day after day after day. It chips away.
Yeah.
And as parents, you tend to break.
Yeah.
You tend to go, I'm making my kid feel bad. I held out for this long. It's better than nothing. So now I'm just going to give in.
Yeah.
And so my encouragement to the parents is because, listen, I know it's not easy. I know it's hard to go against the grain.
Yeah.
It's not only is it not fun for them to be the only kid that doesn't have the phone, it's not fun to be the parent going, I'm that parent that isn't allowing them the phone.
Yeah.
I'm that parent. It's not fun to be that. And yet we're smart enough to know it's the better decision.
Right.
It's the better parenting decision. So I want to encourage parents, like, we were tough, and you can speak to this. Like when Papa and I would say, and by the way, we call Val Papa.
I love it.
Sorry. Kat told you that earlier.
Dad, he's Russian. It's Papa. So Papa and I would just be like, no, go outside, go figure it out, go play. And we sounded like mean parents, but that's why our kids are the way they are today.
Yes, but I think that it's almost, I don't want to say cruel, that's not the right word, but when parents are like, nope, you can't have this, you got to figure it out on your own, and maybe they're on their computer or they're on their phone. That's where it gets tough, where it's like, but you're doing this and then you're not allowing me. And I at least, that's when I am like, all right, we got to cut the cameras. What's going on? I'm not liking this. And I think we were a very physically active household, and my dad loved to be outside, loved to work out with us, loved to do things. And so I was very appreciative that if my dad said, nope, we're not doing phones, we're not doing iPads, but we can do this instead. I loved that. I love that there was always but we can do this.
Yeah.
When there's no option,
Right.
then that feels cruel, because then all my friends are out here doing something and I'm sitting at home having to come up with whatever. And sometimes, if your parents are working or there's, they have errands to run or they're cleaning, then I got to figure it out for my own. But I think as parents, I would encourage you guys to do things together also. That was something that I loved. We always did things as a family. It never felt like, okay, the parents are in one room, the kids are in another. It was, okay, what can we all do together? Let's go to the pool. Let's go on a walk. Let's go work out. Let's go paint. Or my dad would say, let's cook together. Let's do something. But that, I think, made it way more enjoyable rather than just stripping something from me and then there be no creative replacement,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's fantastic. I would love to move also to another topic as it relates to faith development, and that's friendships, community, that type of thing. What did your parents cultivate? Or maybe it was through school, or what did faith community look like for you?
So we had this conversation at dinner the other night. Growing up, I did not really have that many friends. We always lived a little bit further away, I think, from either like where we went to school or sports or whatever. So I would hang out with my friends, obviously, in, class, or if I was training at a facility, my tennis friends there. But a lot of time was really spent with my brothers. And so I think we leaned on each other a lot just for examples and like who's doing what and, who's following mom and papa the best and et cetera. But then once I got out of high school and my brothers were still in school, and this is when I'm working a regular job and I'm having to find new community that's not, the daily people I'm seeing. I think that's where things can go one of two ways, really great or really poor. And I definitely had a season of life where I was not surrounding myself with the best people that I wouldn't say they were knocking my faith at all, but surely they were not encouraging me, to pursue the Christ-like life. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that a lot of times when you surround yourself with people that aren't encouraging in you that way, you just become very complacent and you let a lot of things sort of get swept under the rug, behaviors and normalizing patterns that, maybe if you were surrounded by, again, your family and that, again, having that consistency, it would look a lot different. And so I think that's when it became more of a conscious effort for me, at least, to go, okay, I know that when I'm surrounding myself with people who are choosing to do life the same as me and encouraging me in all the right ways, I'm acting better. I have a better attitude. My choices are, positive and impacting people in a better way. And I think that can happen at any stage of life, whether you're, a full-grown adult or a child.
Did you ever think, because I know we were picky about who you guys were friends with because we didn't want influences that weren't on the same wavelength as us, especially if they were very spiritually different. And I'm not talking just about another religion. I'm talking like dark and demonic.
Yeah.
Right. So, because we have, and we're still friends today. We had a family down the street and they were Orthodox Jews. And you guys, we played all the time. We were very good friends. They had, but it was still, we felt very much one and the same in the things that we were doing and practicing. So it's like I would allow them to go to their house. Yeah. But there was a lot of people that we said no to as friends. So because we didn't live close to school, that hindered them from hanging out with their friends after school a lot also. And I didn't allow sleepovers. I was that mom too, but I think it was the best choice. I'm glad I didn't. I don't regret it. But it did limit their friendships because of some of those things. But I'd like to know, with some of the friends that you did have from a spiritual aspect, did you ever feel like there were, when you were younger, that there were definitely influences that you knew those were good friends to have? Or did you ever feel like you really wanted to be friends with some people and we just put the kibosh on it?
I think that I was able to recognize for sure the friends that I probably shouldn't be hanging out with that weren't impacting, my relationship with Christ in the most beneficial way. I think I could sniff that out for sure. And I think that also when I would leave, I had a friend, and I went to school with her, and she was always one of the friends that like I could go over her house whenever I wanted after school, or I could hang out with her. And my parents really loved her family. And every time I left, I was like, oh, their family's just like my family. And it feels so great. But every time I left, I felt like I had a good attitude and I just had a very peaceful energy. And I wasn't leaving with a little bit of an attitude, or I wasn't leaving, maybe having just heard a bunch of swear words or inappropriate music or just things that like last, because then when you go home, you just mimic that, And so I think that, I was able to tell the difference for myself when we were younger. And then also just, I think they did a good job of, like you said, regardless of even people who don't follow the same exact religion, but just having those same morals and how they treated their parents. Did they respect them? Were they kind? Were they, honest and truthful? All these things. And I always felt, it's like safe there, I guess.
Yeah. What I think is so powerful, what you just said, is like, I've always seen it as when you walk into an environment, you often don't know like what you're absorbing, right? We talked about this a little bit. We talked about like the spiritual environment, but there really are things that we absorb and we take from, even like we're looking at from a spiritual lens. What you mentioned is like leaving some people's homes, you left with the spirit of peace. You left with, there are things like I went in there one way and I left different. And even as a kid, you discerned that. And recognizing, I think I'm taking this to encourage our own children, that like you have a spirit of discernment in you, that when you're spending time with a friend or at a friend's home, like how are you leaving? What are you leaving with? Is it like sarcasm, an attitude, complaining, like anger? And you really start to realize what you've absorbed. But I think it's just so powerful to hear it. You knew that as a kid.
I will say, I also, as much as I think it's great to I don't want to use the word shelter, but to kind of place those boundaries on who you allow your kids to spend time with. And I think when they're younger, it's certainly more important to shield that. But I also don't think that it's the smartest, and this is just my opinion, to only surround yourself with the people that have maybe the exact same mindset as you, not from a what you're absorbing perspective, but like that is just how the world is, right? So if we're so blind to everything going around or around us in general, it's almost like we don't really know what's real life. We only have this tunnel vision of how we should act and how we think people are. And so I know when I got to high school, my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I went to a public school. And this was like the first time ever that I was around kids that obviously have so many different walks of life and different backgrounds. And I think that I was able to discern, okay, maybe I'm not going to spend all my time with these people that I don't feel that are encouraging me in the best way, but I can still love them and I can still see them at school and I can still hang out with them and I can still be a light and an example. And I don't need to cut off communication, because then number one, that is not building any sort of, I'm not able to be tested. I'm not able to see, okay, well, when I'm out in the real world, am I able to really fight for the life that I know I want to live and how I want to walk? But also we're called to be examples and to be lights.
I will say in that decision, because that was a really big decision, going from private Christian school to saying, can I go to public school? And it was a massive public school. It was 3,000.
It was like 3,500 kids.
3,500 kids. But see, this is the discernment that we had with Natasha. And even though those 13 to 15 or 16 were really difficult years, we also saw so much progress in her after she had come back from camp and things were looking different. And the strength and the leadership that she has. I mean, you can hear she's a leader. She's the one leading the pack. So her friends follow her. She's not following them. So that was also discernment going, I know her and her personality and she's strong. And so she's not going to be the follower at this public school. And when they go, come on in and let's do the drugs over here or let's do, or whatever, just stuff. She's going to, if she's going to do it, she's going to do it because she wants to do it. It's not going to be because someone's convincing or persuading her to do it. So that was a decision for us to go, she's got a big choice to make, but I know that she's a leader. And so she's going to either choose to lead well or lead and make good decisions or not so good ones, but that's going to be her choice. Whereas if I had a child that was very different, that was much more shy, that could be persuaded easily, I might not have made that decision to allow
it's
them.
really good to even the discernment as a parent. We've always said this is one child, one year at a time. Right. And it's like, okay, so we'll just discern what school option is best next year, each child at a time. And that's what you, the discernment there in that.
I feel, sorry, go ahead.
I got to get to some listener questions.
Well, can I just say one more thing? Okay. I also feel that guys, have me on for a whole season, please.
She's like, it's my time now.
You gave me the mic. I will take it. I also think that each child and each person in general has their own strengths. And I think that that decision for you guys to let me go maybe to a public school or to be in a larger space, I personally feel like it helped me rise to the occasion because it gave me room to step into a leadership position where before maybe I just continuously felt like everyone around me is the same and I don't have, the biggest chance to stand out. My time to shine here. So, but like she said, every child is different. Everyone has their strengths. And so I think that you also kind of have to gauge that. And that's where open conversation and dialogue comes in and really understanding your children and also, the parents and how they all work. But anyways, that's all I have to say.
Before we get to that listener question, can I ask you one thing? What was the one thing that you look back on that maybe your parents did that shaped you the most?
I mean, I want to say it's the same word as before, but I think that the one thing that shaped me the most was just the example of consistency. And I honestly think that's in every aspect of life spiritually. Like my mom was so consistent spiritually. It was church every single Sunday, prayer before every single meal, talking about Jesus in the car, listening to worship music. Like it was just consistency where it was a lifestyle. It wasn't even, oh, we have to do this. It's just who we were. And I loved that. And, my dad did so many incredible things in that lane as well. But also we're such not to change like the topic, but even, in a physical sense of like health and wellness, the consistency with that, the consistency with how they treat other people, like it's just muscle memory. And then when you become an adult and you're flying on your own, it's just instinctually what you want to do because that's all you know, and you've been able to exercise that. And so I think having that, it wasn't like a one-off time and then I kind of have to scurry and figure it out on my own. I obviously did, but I had so much practice doing it that I fell right into place. And I think that was the biggest help that they, did in our family.
Yeah. More caught than taught.
Okay. We're going to take a listener question from Sandy. And Natasha, this is probably for you. She wants to know, how do you deal with a rude, know-it-all sibling?
Did you have one of those?
I was one. No, I was her. She was me. I don't know. Just ignore them. Honestly, that's what I would say. Like truly, because when they would, if I seriously was that sibling. I sort of still am. But whenever you get that, attention or just people are just saying things to say things, the best I think is just to kind of like tune it out, like hear them and listen, but at the same time, just move on with your life.
I would just say, how do you deal with rude people in general? However, we know that siblings, you're living with them typically, but I think your advice was pretty good. You can listen to them. You don't have to endure what they're saying. You don't have to take it in. You don't have to even feed it. You can sit and not, and it's annoying. But
well, I just feel like, be honest. Like, I think if you're rude, most likely that you're being rude. If you have an attitude, I think in the back of your head, whether you're admitting it to yourself or not, you have an attitude and you're looking for some type of reaction. At least I was. So I think whenever I wouldn't get it, I was like, okay, then I'm just going to move on. But if there was any sort of conflict, if I was rude and then you gave me something back, you're opening the door to then go, all right, let's go and yes, exactly.
It's like, I don't, to deal with it, I'm like, you can know it all. That's
exactly.
fine. You teach me.
Right.
And then when you start teaching me, now all of a sudden I'm inviting you into becoming a friend with me.
Right.
But I have to humble myself and be like, okay, I'm not going to butt heads.
Right.
You are there is so much about you that is your mom and your dad. It is just unbelievable. So it's awesome.
I'm going to do this one last question from Teresa. And she says, what does the Bible say about fear? I'm starting a new job soon and I'm kind of scared.
Love. We weren't given a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind.
Yeah.
I would just say, take those scriptures. Our 9-year-old, 10-year-old daughter does it. And she is just,
she was going through a bout of fear. And I wrote it. I wrote it out. I sometimes watercolor. I'm not very good, but just to like a creative outlet. And I watercolored it on a little thing and I put it on her mirror. And that was one thing I'd love to ask her one day when she's 25 and say like, oh, it'll get me emotional. Like, what are the things, And I think I just did it. It was like one of those Holy Spirit, like, I don't know where it came from. I don't even do this for my mirror, but I did it for her. And I put that verse that you are not given a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And that girl has taken that verse. And I did it one time and I'm not trying to like pat myself on the back. It was just the Lord. And now that's what she does for her whenever she's like going through something and she puts these little scriptures up on her wall. She has like a prayer wall and like she's taken it way further than I ever did. And I wish I'd done that when I was a kid to put it in front of me,
Yeah.
And I would say that fear is not the absence of courage. Our ability to be able to step into fear is where we find courage. And if you step into this and you go to your job, there's bravery on the other side.
Yeah.
And that
I'm like, go girl.
That feeling of bravery is just, it's a beautiful feeling. And so I would just say, step into that and feel brave. Do the brave thing.
I would also say that I feel like there's not a lot of growth without being uncomfortable. And so stepping into that, knowing it's a season where you really can grow and there's a lot of change that could be so beneficial it doesn't happen without a little bit of a fight, you know, and a little bit of uncomfortability. And I think that's a beautiful thing, even though right at the start, it can feel very foreign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that he's with us the entire time.
He's always with us.
And do you hear her saying the things? Like, this is what's so cool.
I'm going to cry.
I know, me too. But
Totally
like sitting with you and Val, these last episodes, like everything that your parents said, like you're not parroting, you're not mimicking, you're saying it. It's true for you.
Yeah.
Look what you've raised.
And I remember the phone call. I remember the phone call
Proud of you, Tachi.
10, 12 years ago. And I remember you going to camp and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at you now. Like just so cool. What a cool full circle moment.
God's so good. Because God's, it's not just the outcome, but he sees you through the hard times. And that's why I say God is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's why Job is one of my favorite books of the Bible.
Wow.
It really is. Guys, this was so good. Natasha, thank you for joining us.
Guys, write in the comments if you want me back for full season. Don't forget to say.
I see it happening.
I see it too.
Life really is like a roller coaster, but it is so much better when we have friends and family and go through it together. So this season, we've got a free PDF called The Healthy Home Guide, and it's from Josh and Christy's book, Famous at Home. Go to Candace.com to find the link. It's in our show notes. My voice is cracking. I feel great, but I might be a little tired. Until next time, be grateful all day, every day. If you value local, trustworthy, and high-quality food, now is the perfect time to join the Good Ranchers family. I was thrilled when my first Good Ranchers box showed up and it was all still perfectly frozen. And what I really love about Good Ranchers is their commitment to transparency. They believe you have the right to know exactly what's in your food. I mean, hello. And they are also amazing supporters of this show. Good Ranchers sources all of their meat from local U.S. farms, so you're getting the best of the best. No antibiotics, no added hormones, just pure, delicious meat you can trust. And do you ever notice when you're in the store, when you buy chicken or beef, it costs more and the portions way less every time you buy it? But imagine having top quality, 100% American beef, chicken, pork, and wild-caught seafood delivered right to your door. Just head over to GoodRanchers.com and subscribe to any box to unlock savings. Good Ranchers is where you can get 100% USA grown meat you can trust that's tender and full of flavor every single time. With meat prices continuing to go up and the quality at the store going down, Good Ranchers can save you hundreds. Your taste buds, your wallet, and local ranchers will thank you. GoodRanchers.com, American meat delivered. I am so grateful you're here. And if you're feeling gratitude today, click the like button and comment what you're grateful for. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe. CandyRock Entertainment, all rights reserved.